This weekend is Anime Expo in Los Angeles, California, located at the Los Angeles Convention Center. And while there isn't much big reveals that are coming out of it so far related to Transformers, one big thing that was revealed during the dealer setup was that from the Viz Media booth. Now, it seems that Viz Media, better known as Viz Video, one of the pioneers of American importing of Japanese media, has announced that they're going to be getting a special manga release. Now, for people who aren't familiar with Viz Media many years ago was known as Viz Video, and they were one of the first companies to really bring over anime and manga in a translated form properly. Of course, you have the stuff like Speed Racer and Astro Boy and Robotech, but Viz Video, which now is known as Viz Media, was one of the first ones really to try to keep stuff true to form. And their biggest hit that really broke them out was that of Ranma 1/2, for people who aren't familiar with that, back in, I believe it was 93, 94 when they first broke that out. And it just exploded for them, and now they're the monster that they are today. And so they announced today, and this is a big one, they announced today that they're going to be porting over the original Fight Super Lifeform Transformer mangas from back in the day. And the art that they used for this announcement makes me more excited because it really tells me what specifically they're using as their source material. And they're using the TV magazine stuff from what it seems like, because they showed the cover art of the old Super Fight Transform manga compilation that was, the art was done by Ban Megami a couple of years ago. I believe it was in 2002 they did that collection. So what is this exactly? So between 1985 until I want to say like 92, which was Zone and Battlestars, TV Magazine ran a monthly manga series of Transformers for like, so to give an example, like Generation 1 Season 1 and 2 had approximately about 12 issues of stories. Then there was a whole bunch of filler stuff, like, like stuff that was kind of like Operation Combination and everything. Then when they had, like, let's say Transformers 2010, there was 3 issues. Headmasters had 8 issues. Masterforce had also 12. Victory, Zone, Battlestars. So there was a ton of supplemental manga exclusive stories in Japan, different from what we had with the Marvel comics, different from what we had with storybooks and stuff like that. This was exclusive material done specifically for the Japanese audience, exclusively available in TV Magazine. And it relegated and stayed there for years and years and years, and the only way you were able to get it was to get individual issues of TV Magazine and piece together those individual issues packaged in between those magazines. And then Million Publishing in 2002 gave us the amazing release of the Fight Super Lifeform Transformers manga compilation, also known as The Comics, as they called it here. And it was like a phone book-sized manga compilation with everything in it. Little things had to be tweaked here and there. From what I heard from my buddy Hydra, some of the color pages that were available in the original TV magazine format were made black and white for this, just to keep a consistency with the quality of the pages for this phone book sized book. And I mean, this book was crazy. It had 640 pages. It was huge. I have it. I'm looking at it right now. It's like a phone book. And this thing was crazy, and it was like the ultimate, item if you wanted to right away go to a specific story from its gigantic history that it had up to that point. It was absolutely, like, you're talking, I think at the time it was 85 to about 92. So that entire span of Transformer history of mangas and every single story, including odd stuff like the Zone Special manga, the Battlestars manga. There was extra gallery art. There was an interview with the artist Ban Megami. Ban Megami made a special cover for that collection. So all of that stuff. And now it looks like Viz Media has gotten the rights to finally, after all these years, translate this into English. Now, they say here it's going to be Volume 1. So obviously, and it's the smart thing to do, is that because they're not going to print it like the Japanese did, where it's a giant phone book one-shot. The smart thing for them to do is obviously to break it down and do it in multiple volume segments. Now, I mean, when you're talking like 640 pages, they could probably pace it a little smarter and they could probably break it down to, I mean, I would say, because the average manga tokuban or a tome is usually, I want to say, between like, 180 to 200 pages, depending on, the material. So I could see them taking like, let's take all the Generation 1, 84, 85 stuff. And then they could do like Transformers 2010 and Headmasters together and do that as another one. Then they could do like Masterforce and Victory as another one. And then they could do Zone, Battlestars, and a whole bunch of supplemental material and get like a good 4 or 5 books out of everything if they pace it any way they want. And what would be cool is it might be the first time that this stuff is reprinted in its original, because some of the pages had which are called 3-color pages, which is sometimes like, I'm pretty sure if you look up, the best example that people are familiar with is Dragon Ball. Sometimes the first couple pages of a story will be done in like limited color pages, like they'll have like 7 different colors, and then the rest of the manga's in black and white. So it might be the first time since its original publication that we'll have these stories reprinted and have those reprints have those color pages. This is just an assumption based on what could be. And Viz Media, up to this point, usually is very good with staying true with the original source material. I know that certain brands that they have, when they have an extremely wide audience for their sales, there is a tricky area there. So this is my only concern. So back in the day when Viz Media was Viz Video and they were bringing over the mangas of, let's say, Ranma 1/2, everything was uncensored. Everything was kept as it was. It was done in the right to left format, the original Japanese format. Nudity was still there. Blood was still there. Everything was fine. You fast forward, manga becomes like, let's say like, I want to say like early 2000s, anime and manga becomes mainstream. It becomes huge. And now the microscope is on top of Viz Media and Viz Video, and now they can't really put some of their popular brands completely uncensored because this stuff has to be in a chapters, it has to be in a Borders, it has to be in bookstores, and it's not like something like a Playboy magazine that has to be behind the counter. So they couldn't just have like something like a Ranma 1/2 back in the day that just shows breasts. So the best example was Dragon Ball. Dragon Ball, specifically the first half of Dragon Ball Vanilla, if you will, there's nudity, there's blood. Dragon Ball Z, there's a lot of blood. There's a lot of, hole through Goku's chest, so to speak. So they had to censor a lot of stuff. And that led to a lot of criticism because Viz Media and Viz Video up to that point had a reputation of always keeping stuff true to its original source material. My concern here is there's some stories in the Transformer stuff that is a little, I don't want to say risque, but might be not for every audience. I don't want to spoil, but some animals get killed. Cute animals get killed. And I don't know if they're going to want to leave that in. If Viz Media is talking with Hasbro wanting to bring over that product, it's them going, are we marketing this at a general audience because Transformers is a mainstream brand that's known for movies and cartoons and toys? It has rescue bots. It has stuff that even children might want to pick up this manga. Do we want to show, a story where a Decepticon kills a dog? I don't want to spoil too much, but it's just there's certain things that I think they might cut out. The Transformers Victory had a whole segment that might be, that might be a little dicey for them, and they might cut a lot of that kind of stuff out too. I don't want to jump too much into it in specifics. If you really want to spoil yourself, you could dig for yourself. I don't want to spoil it here for some listeners on the podcast, but it really makes me wonder if they're going to keep the material 100% as it was originally intended, is because this brand is so big and well known, and this is a license that they're doing with them. Are they going to try to keep it as kosher as possible because Hasbro might be like hovering above them going, well, you can't show this part of the history of the brand? Because again, it's a manga, and Japan, especially the manga community, as opposed to, say, the anime community in Japan, the manga always is the one that's a little more risque, a little more edgy, because it's a different audience, and I don't want to say it's a smaller audience, but it's usually a more adult audience. A lot of times, the manga versions of an anime have a little more blood, have a little more description, have a little more detail, have a little more nudity. where usually the anime version, they try to play it safe in general because they know that it's on TV and they know that the net is cast wider with an audience even in Japan. So when you're talking about importing to America, Viz up to this point, bearing obviously stuff like big mainstream famous animes, they usually have played it pretty good. But with Transformers, I don't know. This is a weird one. This isn't like bringing over Attack on Titan. This isn't like bringing over Inuyasha or Naruto. This is a different one. This is really an American-born brand that ended up back in Japan when it's complicated with Microman and stuff, but it's an American-born brand in Transformers, brought back to Japan, had its own media there, and then being brought back here and translated more than 3 decades later. And I don't know. There's some stuff from Japan that will fly in Japan and it just won't fly over here. So I wonder if they're going to keep that. Should be interesting to see. I definitely am excited about this. A lot of these stories have already been translated by fans years ago, but it still would be cool that, it's available. And considering that even the manga collection one that people picked up, and that was actually what was used for a majority of the fan translation. When people got their hands on this, we just scanned that. Stuff is still, lacking the full color pages. Some stuff was printed backwards. Some pages are pixelated because they had to blow up the pages because the original pages that they had for their sources weren't great. So maybe there's going to be a good update to this. Maybe there's going to be a really good update to this. I'm reminded of this is very similar to, if you look up Bat Manga, which was when Batman, the 66 Batman series came out, it was actually huge in Japan, and they actually made their own exclusive manga kind of based around that time when Batman was huge in Japan. And then years later, that manga got translated and brought over here in a beautiful big book. Look up Bat Manga. It's a really interesting thing. And the way that they did it was they had to track down the original pages, and it was such a labor of love because they had to scan these old collections from different people, including one of the original artists of the Bat Manga. And it was crazy, but the beautiful thing about it was everything was said and done. It was maintained, not censored, left as it originally was, and kept so that, an archive for even the English-speaking audience. So I really hope that we get something like that here, and, we don't have just like Million Publications 2002 phone book release as our only modern reprint of it. This could be something really cool, and considering it's done in a more smaller, traditional tome format, for manga, I appreciate that, because then there's no, oh my God, we got to condense everything and keep it small. Like, they could actually pace themselves, put extra material, and it could look really cool. And we'll get unique covers, hopefully, too, because the cover that they show here, they show the cover for the giant phone book one, as I like to call it, the 640-page version. So maybe Ban Megami is going to bring us some original covers. Maybe they'll get some, old Ox art and use that for covers. Who knows? But this is really cool. I'm really excited about this. This is something that I always like to talk a lot about because it's a strong part of Transformers lore and history that not a lot of people are familiar with. They know it exists, but they haven't had a chance to read it, or they don't have the opportunities. This is going to give people an opportunity. This is stuff that's going to show up in bookstores and give people a better opportunity to pick it up. This is something they could go to their local comic book stores and they'll be able to order it in the future because it's Viz. Viz is this giant media conglomerate now, and it's going to give this obscure, weird manga that's been around for 3 decades an opportunity to finally be read by an English-speaking audience. And considering that there's a lot of material here on the bone, this is really cool. So let me know what you think about this. Let me know if you're excited. And let me know which part, if you've read these in the past already, which part are you most excited about to see translated now?